So Naveen, your story is an extraordinary one. I mean, you really came from poverty and almost nothing and came to the US and have been able to create, a fortune and build some extraordinary companies. I'd love to, I mean, it's so hard to build a business. I'd love to hear about how you think about that. And I guess also one of the things I'm really struck by is I've gotten to know your kids and your wife over the years. You have what seems to be a very extraordinary family and kids who are very driven and seem to be motivated. And a lot of times you see the next generation doesn't quite have that same fire that you have. How have you found the ability the balance to be able to go out there and build great companies and dream big and create high quality human beings as well who seem to have quite a drive?
You asked me 10 questions because he'll never get a
Now I never have to say anything for the rest of the 20 minutes. So.
No, his thinking was, not sure which one to answer first, but let's go backward. And let's just talk for a second about raising children in an affluent family. It's easy to see when we come from poverty and having that hunger and a desire to go out and do something because that's inherently what you set out to do when you come from something nothing. But it's really hard when you have these children growing up in an affluent family. How do you give them the same set of obsession, same set of desire to go out and do something meaningful? And I thought that was really interesting. And I think maybe let me attack that part. And then I'm going to come back and talk about how do you go out and build amazing companies? Because it's never about having the right answer. It is about asking the different questions about when you go out and build a company. And I'm going to come back and touch on that in a second here. So let's talk about, I have 3 children. And I'm just, as a father, I'm going to just brag about them for about a minute or so. They are 29, 25, and 21. And our 29-year-old graduated from Wharton. When he was 17, he built Kairos, which is now world's largest college entrepreneurship thing. And you can Google all about him. He's in the full-page profile on Wall Street Journal, profiled in New Yorker. He's profiled in Wired magazine. He's in the cover of Inc. magazine. Ankur, A-N-K-U-R, Ankur Jain. The thing that amazing about him is, after he graduated, he started a company, sold the company, and now he's building a thing for incubator for solving the world's biggest problem: affordable housing, affordable childcare, affordable senior care. And I'm going to come back and say what it took to get that. Our daughter graduated from Stanford Mayfield Fellow, Stanford STEM Fellow, UN Ambassador for United Nations, Priyanka, P-R-I-Y-A-N-K-A. She set out to solve the problem of women empowerment. Ends up, after she graduates, works in the AI company to remove the gender bias in hiring, because that's what she cared about. Our youngest just graduated from Stanford a couple of months ago, and he became a Schwarzman Scholar. The 130 kids around the world that Steve Schwarzman sent them to Tsinghua University in Beijing to learn about the international relationship. And as a Schwarzman Scholar, as we speak, he is currently in Beijing. How do we get these 3 kids to go out and do these amazing things? When they were growing up, we redefined what success meant. We told them day in, day out, and success will never be measured by how much money you have in the bank. Your success will be measured by how many lives you are able to improve while you are alive. We told them the day you know you're successful is the day you become humble, because when you have iota of arrogance left in you, you're still trying to prove something to someone else or yourself. So you become humble, you become successful. We told them that your self-esteem will never be from what you own. Your self-esteem comes from what you create. So if you own a lot and you haven't created anything, you're still a parasite on humanity, and don't ever be a parasite. Right? To us, it was never, and the problem is that we all tell our children all these amazing things that we talk about, then we go out and do something else. The children don't care what you tell them, they watch you do things. So let me give you another example. My first company that I started, with God's grace, became absolutely wildly successful beyond any imagination. Here's a guy who came to this country with absolutely nothing, $5 in my pocket, didn't speak the language. And the first company that I started at its peak was worth $40 billion. After a company took public, got out of the things, any which way you look at it, God was very kind to us. At that point, it would have been the easiest thing for me to say, I'm going to now, kids are very young, I'm going to go spend time with our children. And everybody would have said, yeah, that's the right thing to do. Now imagine, that would have been the most selfish thing for me. Now imagine from the children's perspective what they would have seen. When they go to school, they see their dad sitting on the sofa watching CNBC. They come back from school, hard work, and they see the dad sitting on the sofa watching CNBC. I tell them, you need to work hard and make something of yourself, and say, I'm going to grow up just like my dad, sitting on the sofa watching CNBC. Instead, what they saw was, dad starts a second company, didn't have to do it, but wants to solve the problem. He starts a third company and a fourth company, and the dad goes completely nuts. One day he comes home and says, we are going to go to the moon. And they all look at me and say, Dad, there's not a single private enterprise that has ever gone to the moon. It's reserved for superpowers. What makes you think you can do that? Dad does not listen. Dad goes out and starts a company with the mission, and next year, by the way, we are the only company that has permission to leave Earth orbit, only private company, and our first mission to the moon is launching next year.
This is Moon Express.
This Moon Express, right?
Yeah, amazing.
Now, having done that, 3 years ago, Dad lost every single marble in his head. Dad says, I'm going to start a company that's going to prevent and reverse chronic diseases. Time for a family meeting. Kids are older, so kids have a family meeting, and now I'm called into this family meeting. Dad, you are 57 years old. You have done your thing. This is not the time for you to start another company. Ride into sunset, because it's a good time to leave when you are high. Dad says, young man, you have not seen nothing yet. Dad goes out and says, I'm going to start a company that's going to analyze the gut microbiome and every gene expression in the human body to reverse the chronic diseases. And they look at me and say, Dad, you know nothing about healthcare. How are you possibly ever going to do that? Nobody's going to ever do this thing, Dad. You are crazy. Dad goes and shows it can be done. And now, today, we are sitting here, and we're going to tell you a little bit more about it. We have not only done several 100,000 people that have taken the test, we can now predict the diseases before they happen. And I hate to say that. You heard about reversing chronic diseases? There is no such thing as universal healthy diet. The people tell you to eat healthy like spinach and kale and broccoli. Those are exactly the things that were causing me harm. There is no such thing. Every single person, you have to know what's happening inside you and find the thing that actually works for you. For me, spinach is bad because I cannot digest oxalic acid. Broccoli is really, really harmful because the sulfate in broccoli causes a sulfide that's causing actual damage, inflammation in my gut. I was eating chickpea and lentil too much and tofu. That is being fermented in my gut because I cannot digest, and now that's releasing ammonia that's causing inflammation. So there is no one tell you that one healthy and universal food. Remember what Hippocrates said. All diseases begin in the gut. One man's food is another man's poison. Let food be thy medicine, let thy medicine be food. So now, I'm going to stop there, and I'm going to come back and talk about how do you go about starting audacious ideas. And the second question you ask, how do you even have a startup? Great idea. How do you get them funded? I mean, because these are all the things. So it's very interesting. Anytime you want to do something that is audacious, you have to look at the problem very differently than anyone else has done. So when we were looking at the Moon Express, and people were saying, if you want to create a multi-planetary society where we want to save the humanity from potential extinction, they look at you and saying, how are you going to grow the food on the moon? If people are going to live there, do you know how to grow the food on the moon? And my answer was, that is the wrong question. Instead of asking how to grow the food on the moon, what if you were to ask, why do we eat food? Just that change of question allows you to say the only reason we eat food is we need energy and we need nutrition. What if we can get energy from radiation just like bacteria does? What if we can get energy from photosynthesis like plants do? What if the nutrition was simply hydrogen, oxygen, and nitrogen, and we have water on the moon that gives us hydrogen and oxygen, and now we just have to find nitrogen or take enough nitrogen, and we can live on the moon? Just that simple question change of why we eat food allows us to solve the problem. Same thing happened when I was solving healthcare. Everyone was looking at doing microbiome, and they were asking the question of, I want to know every organism that's in my gut. And that was the wrong question. The right question to ask is not who they are, but what are they producing? Because what matters is not who is doing it, but what is being done. And there really lied the problem, because what we realized was thousands of different organisms can produce exactly the same thing, or same organisms can produce 10 different things, just like human beings. I, depending on the environment, become a different person. So when I'm at work, I'm an entrepreneur. When I go home, I'm a dishwasher. Am I a dishwasher or an entrepreneur? Depends where I am. So depending on the same organism, in one gut does one thing, and different gut does a different thing. And that's literally what happens, right? Right. Now,
Naveen, could I jump in for a second?
Please.
And I mean, I'd love to, you talk about these big ideas. Maybe you can take us through, and I think you're getting there, but the arc of, you go from an idea to how do you find the people to come be part of this crazy idea in the early days, and finding the capital to make it all happen?
So before I answer that question, I want to just give a little bit more thoughts into when you are starting a company, how do you know you are actually solving the right problem? And the reason I mention is most of the time when we start a company, we set out to solve a problem, hopefully, right? Because some idiots come up with the technology. I'm going to use the blockchain and cryptocurrency, and what problem am I going to solve? I don't know yet, but I need to use cryptocurrency and blockchain. And that really is where I think most people go wrong. You start, what is a problem that's big enough? And then you say, is this really the real problem, or is it simply the symptom of the problem? And let me give one example, and then I'm going to come back and answer your question. So, for example, we all believe the lack of fresh water is a big problem. And let's assume you want to go solve that problem. And now you're looking at the nanotechnology to filter the water. You're really looking at some type of mechanism that you can desalinize the water because you want to solve that problem. Until someone asks a different question. Why do we have a shortage of fresh water? And very quickly you realize, oh, that is just a symptom, because majority of fresh water is used for agriculture. And you say, oh, in that case, what if I do the aeroponic agriculture, hydroponic agriculture, or aquaponic agriculture? That will reduce the use of water, and now I have solved the real problem. And you feel really good. Until someone asks, why do we have all this agriculture? Where does it go? And it turns out, majority of the agriculture is used to feed the cattle. And you say, oh, people want to eat beef. And what if we can grow the beef by taking the stem cell from a cow and simply using the biofactories to create exactly the same muscle tissues that cow has? Instead of growing the eyes and ears that we don't eat, why don't we just grow the muscle tissues? And if you do that, suddenly all that wastage of the agriculture can be used to feed the people. So when people say, how would we survive on a planet when we have 20 billion people? We just solved that by not having cattle. Right? In fact, if you don't have cattle, you don't produce enough methane gas, and you don't have a climate change. So everyone here talks about, oh my God, I'm really worried about the climate change, and they go out and have a whole steak. Right? And that is the problem. If you just don't eat meat once a week, you do more for the environment than driving a Tesla. So I am a vegetarian. I drive a Ferrari, and I love it.
Oh my God. So classic, Naveen.
Right. Now, coming back to the things, like,
I'm a vegetarian. I drive a Ferrari, and I love it. Beautiful. If nothing else comes out of Global Summit, that should be the takeaway.
I meant to say I'm doing better for the environment. That's what
Yeah,
I meant
yeah.
to say. Now coming back, God. So coming back to how do you actually start this? Come on, guys, you got to stop laughing, otherwise my time is running out. So how do you start the audacious ideas? I tell you, it's easier to start a company to solve a big problem than to solve a small problem. And here's why. The best and the brightest human beings don't want to work on something trivial. The people who are very successful and the best in their field, they want to solve a big problem. The best minds want to work on the biggest problem. So when you go out and tell someone, I'm going to reverse chronic diseases so people just do not have chronic diseases, the best and the brightest want to work for you. So when I went out and said, what if? Imagine a world where chronic disease is purely a matter of choice, not a matter of bad luck. I attracted the head of IBM Watson Research to do the AI for me. I took the whole team from Craig Venter for gene expression to analyze the gene expression for me. And I found the technology at the Los Alamos. And the person who developed it came and joined and quit his federal job to come and work for me because he said, this problem is worth solving. An amazing thing happened. When you have all these wonderful people, everyone wants to invest in you. And the more you tell them you don't need the money, they want to give you more money at higher valuation so that you can have it. Right? And that's amazing part. That money comes to those who create the opportunity. The problem is we go out, keep asking for money rather than saying, I'm going to stay focused on solving the problem. The problem is, when you focus on simply making money, you always fail at it. When you go out to focus on solving the problem, because you know if you can help 1 billion people, you can create a $100 billion company. What happens when people go out to create $1 billion? That is where the problem starts. Making money is like having an orgasm. If you focus on it, you're never going to get it. So enjoy the process. And people who know what I mean. Right. Zip it. Next question.
Amazing. All right. So how about this? One of the things we were talking about backstage is how you think about partnerships, and I mean, you're clearly an incredibly confident individual.
Yeah.
And how do you? We were talking about walking away from deals and ultimately, some of the secrets for how you've been successful. How do you? Maybe you can share that.
Yeah, so it's very interesting that when you are working on something that is worth doing, you never want to do something that is for a short term to sacrifice the long term. So for example, people go out and sell the data because they want to make a short-term money. And I can give an example that as we were working on this problem, since we developed this amazing technology that we licensed from the Los Alamos lab, some of the largest pharmaceutical companies came to us and said, we want to license your technology and we'll pay you tens of millions of dollars. We told them we don't want to do that. And they looked at me. Why? I said, we want to co-develop the things for you to work with us to prevent the diseases because your purpose is to keep the people sick. Because you make money when people are sick. I want people to be healthy. And we want to co-develop the prevention vaccines. We want to co-develop the thing that keep people healthy. And this person was from a very large pharmaceutical company. He looks at me and he says, we don't even co-develop with other pharmaceutical companies, let alone a startup company. I looked at him and said, well, if I recall correctly, you called me, I didn't call you. And eventually, they said, well, in that case, we won't do business together. I said, that probably seems like it. And they went away, came back 4 months later, and said, we tried doing what you're doing, we can't, we want to do business with you. And I said, in that case, not only we co-develop, we're going to get a royalty for every vaccine that's sold around the world. And here are the terms. And they looked at it and said, that seems very high. I said, you don't have to take it. Come back 3 months later, it will be double that. And they signed the contract. Right? Because that, to me, is what it takes to be able to walk away from something when you want something done. So when we are, so you were asking me backstage, Naveen, don't you ever raise money? Or does money always come to you? The answer is, we right now, we're about to close our second Series B round for $100 million. And it's a 2-year-old company. Guess what happened? The best people around the world call on us and they say they want to invest in it. And we get to pick and choose whose money we want. And I can tell you, every large food company has called on us, every large pharmaceutical company, every large venture capitalist has come to us. We get to choose and say, not you, sir, not you, sir. If you can do this for us and help us here, we'll take your money. And that's an amazing position to be in when you do that. But to do that, you have to absolutely believe that you're willing to dedicate your life to solving the problem. When people go out there in front of someone, they need to see that in your voice. They need to feel it in your voice that you are doing it for a purpose that you will never shy away from. They need to see that you are willing to sacrifice what it takes to solve this problem. And when they know that, that's when they invest in you. When they see the sign of desperation in you, they never invest in you. So make sure when you go out there, you explain to your investor, God forbid, if I am successful in solving just one disease, that's a $100 billion problem. If I can solve 3 diseases, that's a multi-trillion-dollar problem. God forbid, if I am successful in solving it, loss is yours. Right? That means if you don't come on board now, you are the one who's going to miss the train. I'm going to be just fine because there are millions of people who believe in what I'm doing, and that problem is worth solving. So to me, do something that is worth doing, that's worth dedicating to your life. How many of you in this room, I'm going to ask one single question. When you wake up in the morning, you jump out of the bed. And if you don't, let me tell you something. Go find something else to do. I get up at 4 a.m. and I jump out of the bed because that is what I feel my life calling is. And if you're not jumping out of the bed, call me in the morning and I'll tell you what you should be working on.
Amazing. With that, Naveen, I want to thank you. You are extraordinary. Some great takeaways, brother. Love you, man.
Thank you, brother.
Naveen Jain.
Thank you.
So much energy. Bravo. Thank you.